So today we'll discuss the topics, some of the topics that were left in endocrinology, that is pineal gland, thymus, and some other local hormones. So coming to pineal gland is also called as epiphysis because it is present on the dorsal side of the brain attached to what we call uh, the diencephalon region. So it is also called as epiphysis cerebri or conarium present in the human brain, and it is attached through a pineal stalk to the roof of the third ventricle. Do you know the brain ventricles? The cavities of the brain are called as ventricles. The first one is said to be, can anybody tell me? We have in olfactory lobes all cavities followed by cerebral hemispheres. These are also there are also the ventricles, and these are called as first and second ventricles or paraseals. This is followed by the third part, that is diencephalon, which is having diaceal, that is the third ventricle. So to the roof of the third ventricle, that is diaceal, it is attached by a stalk, and it is covered by one of the three membranes that covers our brain, that is pia meter. Histologically, it contains two types of cells. One is called as parenchymal or chief cells. These are also called as pinealocytes because they are the main components of the pineal gland. And the second one are interstitial or supportive cells. And the hormones that are secreted by the pineal gland is secreted by the chief cells. In addition to this, the pineal gland consists of certain calcareous nodules. These are nodules are nothing but these are carbonates of calcium and magnesium and phosphates of calcium and magnesium. That means calcium carbonates, calcium phosphate, magnesium carbonates, magnesium phosphates. They form into nodule-like structures, and these are called as concretions. So the human pineal body shows the presence of extracellular concretions, and these are also called as corpora erinacea. The extracellular concretions of the pineal gland are said to be called as the corpora erinacea, and sometimes we generally call this as brain sand. Brain sand, and what we call in the Latinized word for this is Cervili cerebri. These are mainly composed of a mineralized. What is that minerals? Calcium and magnesium phosphates and carbonates. Mineralized organic matrix and usually appear in the capsule and septa. Capsule is the outer covering of the pineal gland. And coming to the hormone that is secreted. This is the one you have to remember. The hormone that is secreted by pineal gland is called as melatonin. And chemically, it is N-acetyl 5-methoxytryptamine. This one you have to remember. It was named as melatonin because it lightens the skin of tadpoles by an action on the melanophores. That is the reason why this name is given to it. How this chemical name is derived? Because it is synthesized from 5-hydroxytryptamine, which is also called as serotonin. So this melatonin is said to be synthesized from 5-hydroxytryptamine, also called as serotonin. But this entire reaction starts with the amino acid L-tryptophan. Being catalyzed by tryptophan 5-hydroxylase, it gets hydroxylated at fifth position to form 5-hydroxytryptophan, and it again gets decarboxylated by aromatic alpha amino acid decarboxylase to produce serotonin, from which melatonin is produced. And what happens? Another enzyme, serotonin N-acetyl transferase, transfers acetyl group onto the N end of this one, so that serotonin is converted into N-acetyl serotonin. And finally, it is converted to melatonin by hydroxyindole O methyl transferase. So methyl group is said to be transferred so that this N-acetyl serotonin becomes N-acetyl 5-methoxytryptamine called as melatonin. Okay, so what you have to remember here is, the first thing is that this is called as, pineal body is also called as epiphysis or conarium. Second thing is, it attached to the third ventricle, that is diaceal, by a pineal stalk. The third thing is, the cells of the pineal gland are called as pinealocytes, which are the chief parenchymal cells. And the fourth thing that you have to remember is, pineal gland shows certain calcareous nodules made up of calcium phosphates or magnesium phosphates and calcium carbonates or magnesium carbonates called as concretions. These concretions are also called as brain sand or corpora arenaceae. And the fifth thing is, the hormone that is secreted by pineal gland is called as melatonin, and its chemical name is N-acetyl 5-methoxytryptamine, and it is derived mainly from tryptophan, and its precursor is said to be serotonin. Okay, and serotonin is chemically called as 5-hydroxytryptamine. Okay, so the name, the sixth thing that you have to remember is, the name melatonin is given because it is responsible for lightening of the skin of tadpoles by acting on the melanophores of skin. And coming to the functions, Greeks called this as the seat of soul. Greeks called it as the seat of soul. Why? They think that, not experimentally proved, but everyone believes that pineal gland is the one which controls our circadian rhythms, the biological clock. If you want to wake up at certain point of time in the morning, 4 o'clock, if you think like that, after sleeping exactly at 4 o'clock, you're going to wake up. At the same time, if you habituate of getting food, taking food every day at 1 o'clock, what happens? Hunger pangs start. Gastric secretion starts at 1 o'clock immediately, so that you can take your food then. So all these are said to be biological activities related to the, what we call, sun or moon clock. That is what we call it, this as biological clock or circadian rhythms. And pineal gland is one that influences this, and still the research work is going on this and this aspect. But there are certain other research areas where the thorough evidence is said to be produced. For example, it is it is playing an active role in the light influenced reproductive cycle of rodents and birds. So in rodents and also birds, the reproductive cycle is said to be influenced by the light, because it is said to be related to what we call biological clock. It plays an active role in this aspect. Okay, and another one is said to be the melatonin secretion is associated with the timing of the estrous cycle and menstrual cycle in mammals. So here these things related to reproduction, that too influenced by light or under the control of melatonin. And recently, it is found that it is a source of compound that cures schizophrenia, but evidence is not yet produced. Okay, and we are going to discuss with. Sorry, I hope I forgot to mention one more thing about thymus. So the second gland is said to be thymus. So thymus is said to be is called as partly an endocrine gland and partly a lymphoid structure. Why is it so? Because it secretes a hormone called as thymosin, hence it is called as an endocrine gland. And but in children, it is responsible for immunity because it contains lymphocytes, and it is also the processing site for the T lymphocytes, where the T is derived from the term thymus. Okay, lymphocytes which get matured or which mature in thymus are called as T lymphocytes. Thus, it is both an endocrine gland and a lymphoid structure. So, where it actually is present? The scientists say it is present in the thoracic region, extending up to the neck region. So it is located in the anterior and superior mediastinum. What is mediastinum? Mediastinum, if this is the thoracic cavity, the space at the center of the thoracic cavity is called as mediastinum, in which the heart lies. Okay, and here in this thoracic cavity, adjacent to this, the thymus gland is said to be located behind the sternum and reaches up to the neck, up to the lower border of the thyroid gland in the neck region. When you see this structure here in the child, what book says it is functional. It is functional in child and gradually gets atrophied in adult. Atrophy means degenerates. So when you see the structure, it is almost the same externally, but physiologically, the function of the thymus gland is said to be reduced because as we grow, the thymus gland is deposited with fatty tissue, which is having large amounts of lymphatic tissue. Thus, it is helpful in immunity. That is replaced, those lymphatic tissue is replaced by fatty tissue in the adult. Thus, it gradually loses its function of as a lymphoid structure. It consists of two fused asymmetrical and elongated flask-shaped lobes. The left lobe is said to be smaller and the right lobe is said to be larger. Each lobe is composed internally by a number of lobules. It contains a number of lobules. Each lobule is again made up of small follicles. Okay, and coming to the its weight, it is largest relative to body weight in the fetus and in childhood up to the age of puberty, after which it gradually degenerates. That means it undergoes continuous involution. Continuous evolution means gradually it gets degenerated. Let us see what is the how it continuously gets involuted. At birth, its size or weight is said to be 13 grams, which reaches to a maximum of 37 grams by the time we reach our puberty, and gradually it comes down to 3 to 6 grams in old age. What happens here? It gets involuted. The size gradually decreases. The weight gradually decreases. The lymphocytes are said to be lost and it is replaced by fatty tissue. And that is how it is insignificant after the puberty. Why is this so? When we are born, we are said to be not having the completely developed immune system. We are having an immature immune system when we are born. So, in order to get immunity, we have a system that is called a thymus gland. This is responsible for providing us immunity during our childhood up to the age of puberty. And by the time we reach puberty, the immune system is completely developed. At the same time, we are exposed to so many antigens and we got acquired immunity even. And we do not need thymus no more. So that is gradually involuted and we have we are not depending on the thymus for our immunity. And coming to the development of the thymus gland. So out of the three primary germinal layers, thymus develops from the endoderm. Okay. In mammalian embryos, it is the primordial lymphoid organ in which lymphocytes can be first identified. So lymphocytes are first identified in thymus gland only. And through this these are processed and they become the T lymphocytes. After that what happens? Mesodermal tissues invade and from which the lymphoid tissues ultimately develop. And another characteristic feature of the thymus gland is it contains Hassel's corpuscles. This you have to remember. These are nothing but the remnants of the original endoderm from which thymus is derived. So the endoderm gives rise to thymus gland and some of the endodermal cells remain as Hassel's corpuscles. Coming to histology, it shows an outer capsule, it is surrounded by a capsule followed by cortex and medulla. The capsule is said to be made up of connective tissue containing cells like macrophages, plasma cells, mast cells, granular leukocytes. What are granular leukocytes? The cells which have stored products in the form of vesicles are called as granules, and these leukocytes are nothing but white blood cells. So basophils, eosinophils and neutrophils are said to be granular leukocytes and also fat cells. And from the capsule there extend strands that divide the interior of the thymus into small lobules, and these strands are called as trabeculae. And inside this capsule there is cortex and medulla. The cortex consists of a number of densely packed masses of cells that are almost look like lymphocytes. So whatever the cells that are present in the cortex, they look like lymphocytes. And these lymphocytes are of three types based on the size. Some are 11 micrometers and they are called as large lymphocytes, and the others are from 7 to 11 medium lymphocytes, and the third one are small which are 7 micrometers. And the smallest of the lymphocytes, these small lymphocytes are called as thymocytes. So what are the cells of the thymus are called as? The cells of the thymus are called as thymocytes, which are the size of which is 7 micrometers. And what happens is these are the thymocytes are the integral components of the thymus gland. Okay. And coming to the large and medium lymphocytes, they probably undergo 3 to 4 cycles of cell division. So these are the two cells which undergo cell division and they fulfill the role of primitive lymphoid cells actively engaged in lymphopoiesis. What is lymphopoiesis? It is nothing but formation of lymphocytes. So formation of lymphocytes takes place from primitive lymphoid cells, and these primitive lymphoid cells are formed by divisions of large and medium lymphocytes of the thymus gland. And the third portion of the second histological portion of the thymus gland is medulla. It is present in the center. It consists mainly of epithelial cells. In addition to this, there are plasma cells, mast cells, eosinophil cells, melanocytes, and it is said to be present generally near blood vessels. And the characteristic feature, as I have told you before, is the presence of Hassel's concentric corpuscles. These are also called as thymic corpuscles. And what are these? These are nothing but flattened epithelial reticular cells. These are flattened epithelial reticular cells present in the thymus gland called as Hassel's concentric corpuscles. The function of which is said to be not um, completely deciphered. And coming to the endocrine activity of this gland, it produces a hormone called as thymosin. This hormone is a polypeptide hormone. So what is the function of this hormone? It increases the number of lymphocytes in the circulation. The first function is to increase the number of lymphocytes. And the second function is to reject skin grafts from other mammals. Like our major histocompatibility complex MHC, they reject what we call skin grafts. Here also, thymosin is said to be accelerating the process of rejection of skin grafts from other mammals. And how it is secreted? Scientists say its secretion is stimulated by anterior pituitary gland and it is inhibited by gonads and also adrenal cortex. And now we come to the most important of this insignificant hormones because they are not secreted by any endocrine gland. They are secreted in various tissues. Hormones are those secretions of endocrine gland which are released at one place and they are said to be functioning at a distant place on a target organ. But here, these are said to be uh, chemical substances with hormone like functions but with a localized effect. Wherever they are said to be released to some extent, nearby place or some other what we call they are said to be having their function. And there are so many of these like erythropoietin, renin, histamine and heparin, prostaglandins, serotonin, bradykinins, endothelins, atrial natriuretic peptide, and adrenomedullins. So let me explain these one by one. First of all, let us start with adrenomedullins. As the name implies, it is secreted by adrenal medulla. So it's a protein that is secreted by adrenal medulla, hence called as adrenomedullins. And this is a peptide having 52 amino acids. And it is found in also intestine, heart, and kidney. Not only adrenal medulla, it is also secreted by intestine, heart, and kidney. It has two functions. One is vasodilation, the other is natriuresis. What is vasodilation? Yesterday we have discussed it. This is the normal blood vessel. When vasodilation takes place, the diameter increases. So one of the functions of adrenomedullins is vasodilation. The second one is natriuresis. So it is derived from two words, natrium and uresis. What is natrium? It is nothing but sodium. Uresis means excretion. So it enhances excretion of sodium through urine, along with urine. Hence we call it as natriuresis. It is the second most important function of adrenomedullins. Now let us see atrial natriuretic peptide. We see there are so many second messengers. One of them is cyclic AMP, and another one is cyclic GMP. And for atrial natriuretic peptide, scientists say cyclic GMP acts as the second messenger. So, how this name is derived? So, the third word says that it is a protein hormone or a peptide or a polypeptide. And second one says natriuretic, means it is responsible for elimination of nitrogen, sodium. And what is the first word? Atrium. It is secreted by the cells of the wall of the atrium of the heart. Hence, it is given the name atrial natriuretic peptide. Here, it is not a single protein. It's a group of or a family of endogenous polypeptides produced from the atrium, that is heart. Hence, we say it is of cardiac origin, and we can call them as simply natriuretic peptides, brain natriuretic peptides, and C-type natriuretic peptides. So thus there are three different classes of these which form into a family of these polypeptides. How these are said to be producing their effect? Atrial myocytes, when get stretched due to increased volume load, it produces vasodilator effect and natriuresis. Yesterday we have seen that how aldosterone works. Aldosterone is responsible for sodium reabsorption. When sodium gets reabsorbed, along with sodium, water also gets reabsorbed because concentration rises there because of sodium, so that water also gets reabsorbed. Okay, and now what happens is here this happens whenever the blood volume is said to be reduced. Thus, it is responsible for maintaining the water balance. So what happens if the blood volume, due to drinking more amount of water than required by the body, because the entire circulatory system can withhold only 5 liters of blood. If you take excess of water, what happens? It increases, the volume increases. So when the volume increases, the atrial wall feels a load or pressure on it. Then the atrial myocytes get stretched. When they get stretched, it produces atrial natriuretic peptide that has a vasodilator effect followed by natriuresis. When sodium is excreted, along with sodium, water is also excreted, and the increased volume of the blood decreases. Okay, next, coming to its main functions, how it does this action on kidney. It increases glomerular filtration rate so that large amounts of water are excreted through urine, a process called as diuresis. What is the diuresis? Excretion of large amounts of water through urine is called as diuresis. How large amounts of water is said to be excreted? Only when glomerular filtration rate increases. When glomerular filtration rate increases, more and more amount of blood is said to be filtered, and here what happens? Vasodilation followed by natriuresis leading to diuresis. And coming to the heart. Heart, it produces vasodilation and thereby decreases arterial pressure. Why vasodilation has to take place? Because of overload of the volume of the blood, there is every chance for the what we call increased arterial pressure. So vasodilation, as it increases the diameter, it decreases the arterial pressure. And coming to its hormonal function. it stimulates lipolytic action. Action means it is responsible for the breakdown of fatty acids or mobilization of fats from fat depot. Secondly, it inhibits aldosterone because aldosterone is responsible for water reabsorption, and its main function is to excrete water, diuresis. So it inhibits aldosterone and also renin secretion. And also the thirdly, antidiuretic hormone, because the antidiuretic hormone along with aldosterone is responsible for water reabsorption. So whatever the mechanisms that are there related to water reabsorption are inhibited, and diuresis is to be promoted. Okay, coming to the next thing, that is endothelins. These are polypeptides containing nearly 21 amino acids. These are of three types: endothelin 1, endothelin 2, and endothelin 3. And they differ in their amino acid sequence only. Out of these, endothelin 1 is the most active. There are three endothelins, but when we see their functions, only endothelin 1 is said to be most active. And they are found in, where they are found in? They are found in vascular endothelium. We know the wall of the blood vessels is called as endothelium, and these proteins are secreted by the cells of the wall of the blood vessels, that is endothelium, hence they are called as endothelins. Apart from this, they are also secreted by kidney, brain, adrenal gland, and intestine, which you need not have to remember. What you have to remember is that they are secreted by the vascular endothelium. And coming to their synthesis, they are synthesized from pre-propeptides. Like insulin is synthesized, we have discussed about pre-proinsulin, which is broken down to proinsulin, finally to insulin. Likewise, here also it is synthesized from pre-propeptides called as pre-proendothelin, and this is broken down by endopeptidases to proendothelins, which are having 13 amino acids, and a converting enzyme breaks down this proendothelin into endothelins, which are having 21 amino acids. So the first one is pre-proendothelin, which is broken down by endopeptidases to proendothelin, which is broken down by converting enzyme into endothelin. So this is the sequence of synthesis of endothelins. Coming to their functions, endothelins through the receptors, endothelin receptor A, endothelin receptor B, ETA and ETB receptors, they're responsible for vasoconstriction. That means here atrial natriuretic peptide is said to be responsible for vasodilation, because whenever the blood volume increases, arterial pressure increases. To decrease it, vasodilation takes place. Opposite to this, endothelins are responsible for vasoconstriction. That too mainly in the coronary artery, that is supplying blood to the wall of the heart, and pulmonary artery that supplies blood to the lungs. These two areas where endothelins are responsible for vasoconstriction, so that what happens, the blood flow and the rate of the heart increases. So thus they increase, because of vasoconstriction, they increase the rate and force of contraction of heart. At the same time, as it is supplied to, as it is uh, involved in vasoconstriction of pulmonary arteries, it is also producing bronchoconstriction. That means the vasoconstriction in the walls of the blood vessels supplied to the lungs is called as bronchoconstriction, leading to the constriction of the lungs. They, by mitogenic effect, also induce changes in the musculature of heart, so that it leads to cardiac hypertrophy. So, what is mitogenic effect? It is nothing but increased mitosis. So, when mitosis increases, there is what happens, the number of cells increase. But here, this mitogenic effect does not increase the number of the cells of the wall of the heart. Rather, it increases the size, leading to cardiac hypertrophy, enlargement. And it also produces atherosclerotic changes in the blood vessel. What are atherosclerotic changes? It is nothing but accumulation of fats. Accumulation of fats is called as atherosclerosis, and these are the two things that are said to be attributed to endothelins. So the number one is said to be vasoconstriction of coronary artery and pulmonary artery. Number two, increased heart rate, simply. Number three, bronchoconstriction. Number four, cardiac hypertrophy. And number five, atherosclerosis of blood vessels. These are the five functions attributed to endothelins. Next one is bradykinin. So, like atrial natriuretic factor, it is also an endogenous vasodilator. It is formed from plasma globulins called as kininogens. So, this is the one you have to remember. So, bradykinin is derived from what? It is derived from a kininogen. Whenever you come across with a suffix gen, you think you have to uh, conclude, you can come to a conclusion that it is an inactive one. For example, pepsinogen, trypsinogen. So where zen is added, pepsinogen is inactive. When it gets activated, it forms pepsin. Likewise, trypsinogen is inactive, which gets activated to produce trypsin. Likewise, kininogen is inactive, which gets activated to produce kinin or bradykinin. So protease kallikrein acts upon high molecular weight kininogen precursor in response to infection or injury, leading to hydrolysis of plasma kininogen to produce bradykinin. Very simple. Whenever an injury takes place or whenever there is infection, what happens? Here, the plasma kininogen is said to be hydrolyzed or broken down in the presence of protease, that is kallikrein, to produce bradykinin. In response to injury or infection, plasma kininogen is hydrolyzed or broken down by the protease called as kallikrein, so that what happens? Bradykinin is produced. It has a number of functions, and the first one is said to be vasodilation via the second messenger, nitric oxide. Okay, so via nitric oxide, it is responsible for vasodilation. Number two, increases the capillary permeability so that swelling of the tissues by the accumulation of fluid takes place, a process called as edema. So the first thing is vasodilation, second thing is edema. Edema is nothing but swelling caused by the infiltration of tissue fluids. And the third one is via its direct effect on heart increases rate and force of contraction, and it also elicits a coronary vasodilation. So actually it is a contradictory. When vasodilation takes place, what happens? The blood flow decreases and the mean arterial pressure also decreases. So, but here, contrary to that, it is also having a direct effect on the heart, where it increases the heart rate and force of contraction is also increased. This is another possible effect of bradykinin. At the same time, other minor effects are it increases salivary secretion, hyperemia of salivary glands, produces visceral smooth muscle contraction, and release of antidiuretic hormone and produces natriuresis. Among all this, what you have to remember is it is a vasodilator and its action is mediated by nitric oxide and it is responsible for increasing the capillary permeability leading to edema. These are the three main things which you have to remember. In addition, it has a direct effect on increasing the heart rate and contraction, force of contraction of the heart. So these four things you remember that is sufficient for the any examination. And coming to the next one, serotonin. We have discussed it just before. What is serotonin? It is chemically 5-hydroxytryptamine. It is found in enterochromatin cells of the gastrointestinal tract. What do you mean by chromatin cells? Those cells that are stained by chromic acid are called as chromatin cells. So these chromatin cells are present in adrenal medulla we have discussed yesterday. And the chromatin cells present in the gastrointestinal tract are called as enterochromatin cells. So along with these cells and platelet and brain, it is found there in all these cells. And where it is synthesized, we have already seen it is synthesized from tryptophan. It is synthesized from tryptophan from which melatonin is synthesized. So serotonin is synthesized from tryptophan by these two reactions. And coming to the functions, it has varied functions. The main three functions are on respiratory system, gastrical tract, and cardiovascular system. On respiratory system, it says that respiratory blood vessel muscles are affected. It affects the muscles of the blood vessels of the respiratory tract. Secondly, it produces intense rhythmic contractions in small intestine so that it may lead to diarrhea and sometimes vomiting. So, vomiting and loose motions, that is diarrhea, are related to serotonin. And thirdly, it has a vasoconstrictor effect on the arteries. Vasoconstriction of arteries is its third important function. In addition to this, it is also found that it is responsible for pain perception. So whenever someone pinches you, you feel pain. So that pain perception is said to be caused by the immediate release of serotonin. At the same time, your sleeping and wakefulness. The sleep wakefulness cycle is also under the control of serotonin. Why? We see that serotonin eventually produces melatonin. So melatonin is responsible for biological clock. Thus, indirectly, serotonin is also responsible for sleep wakefulness cycle. That is the function that is given to the melatonin hormone. And uh, the last one is not that much required. Next one is said to be histamine and heparin. Heparin, we know it is an anticoagulant present in the blood vessels. And coming to these compounds, histamine is a nitrogenous compound involved in local immune response. Both these are synthesized by mast cells of the tissues. They are stored there and they are released under certain circumstances. The mast cells, if they belong to the APUD series, I will let you know what APUD series is. When the mast cells are, if the mast cells that are going to produce histamine and heparin belong to the APUD series, they show high amino content. These mast cells have high amino content. That is the reason why they can produce this nitrogenous compound. So they show a high amino content, amine precursor uptake, followed by amino acid decarboxylase and marked metachromia, and described widely in tissues close to the walls of small blood vessels. So these are found described in the found to be secreted in the tissues close to the walls of small blood vessels. Then what is this APUD series? APUD is related to amine precursor uptake and decarboxylation. That is what is happening here. This is responsible for high amino content, followed by amine precursors are said to be taken up, followed by decarboxylation, leading to the production or synthesis of these hormones. This term is said to be coined by Pierce in 1966 for various cell types like suprarenal chromaffin cells. So this is third chromaffin cell. One is present in medulla, the other is present in intestine, and the third one is present in the kidney. Or what we call suprarenal chromaffin cells, it means medullary, adrenal medullary chromaffin cells. And enterochromaffin cells, mast cells, pancreatic beta cells, pancreatic corticotropes, melanotropes, thyroid C cells, all these together constitute a PUD cell series. That is nothing to explain from my side. You have to remember this entire thing when I share the PPT. You try to remember this. And coming to the main function, histamine's main role is that it is released when it is released, it causes allergy symptoms. That is the main function that you have to remember. And the next one is said to be renin, and renin is said to be part of this system. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, and I'll be dealing with it when I will take up the expiratory system in detail. So I'm leaving it here. You can study from the PPT, and we'll discuss the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system in detail when we deal with the excretory system. And the next one is erythropoietin. It is a glycoprotein hormone. Molecular weight is 34,000 Daltons, and it acts on bone marrow. Its main function is erythropoiesis. That means formation of red blood cells. So where the formation of red blood cells takes place? In the bone marrow. So it stimulates production of red blood cells, so that what happens? Erythrocytes are produced. In addition to erythropoietin, there is another factor called as hemopoietin. Hemopoietin is responsible for the production of white blood cells as well as platelets, whereas erythropoietin does not produce these two like hemopoietin. It produces only red blood cells. It promotes the development of the erythroblast stem cells. You know the process of erythropoiesis. First, stem cells are there from which erythroblasts are produced, from which normoblasts are produced, which form into reticulocyte. Finally, erythrocytes are said to be produced. So this entire process of development of erythroblast stem cells, which mature finally to normoblasts and then reticulocytes and form into erythrocytes or red blood cells, is said to be under the control of erythropoietin hormone. And last one is said to be the prostaglandins. Many of the scientists and in many of the books, these are referred to as local hormones. So if any question is there, identify the local hormone from the following. So three endocrine gland hormones will be given and one prostaglandin will be given. You can write it down. Or any of these prostaglandin, renin, or adrenal medullin, all of the above that is given. Then you can choose the answer, all of the above. And the prostaglandins, the name was given by von Euler in 1935, which is isolated from the human seminal fluid, and thought to be secreted by prostate gland. Hence, it is given prostaglandin. Prostate gland is prostate gland is the accessory gland of the male reproductive system, and Euler thought that it is produced by that particular gland. Hence, it is given the name prostaglandin. So, the same name is said to be continued afterwards. These are fatty acids. Simply, what are prostaglandins? They are fatty acids containing 20 carbons. In their chemical structure, they show a cyclopentane ring, and they are said to be derived from a hypothetical fatty acid, the prostanoic acid, according to Wolff in 1970. But later it is found that it is synthesized from arachidonic acid. Prostaglandins, along with prostacyclins and thromboxanes, are synthesized from arachidonic acid. So, previously it is called as prostanoic acid, from hypothetical prostanoic acid, which is not known to anyone. It is derived. Now we can surely say that literature says that it is synthesized from arachidonic acid along with prostacyclins and thromboxanes. That means arachidonic acid gives rise to prostaglandins, prostacyclins, and thromboxanes, and their function is said to be mediated by the second messenger, cyclic AMP. So all these are said to be signal molecules like hormones. So why we are calling these as hormones? When you observe this, every local hormone is mediated by cyclic AMP, cyclic GMP, nitrous oxide, etc., etc. That means their activity is mediated by second messenger. Why? Because most of them are said to be polypeptides, proteins. That means they are having a signaling activity like the hormones. The secreted prostaglandins also bind to G protein coupled receptors, increase CAMP levels, so that the metabolic activity is said to be regulated in the cells. So this is how it is said to be synthesized. You can go through this afterwards when I share the PPT, and we come across with different types of prostaglandins: I2, D2, F2 alpha, prostaglandins H2, prostaglandin Z2. So from arachidonic acid, there are several levels of the synthesis of different kinds of prostaglandins. And coming to finally, the last slide, the functions of prostaglandins. Their main function, due to their discovery by Euler in the prostate gland, they are found to be having significant role in sperm transport. This is the first function. And the second function is with respect to females. One is onset of menstruation. Second one is labor, means delivery of the baby, but is parturition. And regulation of placental blood flow are also under the control of prostaglandins. So, along with luteinizing hormone, responsible for what we call corpus luteum, progesterone, all these we have discussed about. That is related to menstruation. And parturition is said to be caused by the delivery of the baby is caused by oxytocin. And all these are said to be accompanied with prostaglandin function. And it is also a potent inhibitor on lipolysis. That means lipid breakdown is said to be inhibited, and it increases the permeability to water. And among the different prostaglandins, prostaglandin E and prostaglandin A group are responsible for vasodilation, which is not abolished by atropine. Atropine is a chemical that decreases vasodilation, and whereas prostaglandins, when they increase vasodilation, even we administer atropine, this vasodilation is not abolished. And lastly, human bronchial smooth muscle is found to be relaxed by prostaglandins E1, E2, whereas F2 alpha is responsible for contraction of the smooth muscles of the lungs. So these are the different functions attributed to prostaglandins. So with this, we come to the end of the endocrinology portion totally. In the evening class at 8 o'clock, I'll be discussing about, we'll start the nerve physiology. Okay, thank you.